Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to do something seriously mind-bending. We are taking Shakespeare's absolute masterpiece, King Lear, and we're flipping it completely on its head. We're going to transform it from a dusty 17th century tragedy into a profound ancient Vedantic map of your very own mind. Yet, you heard that right. We're going to look at sources that decode this classic not just as some sad story about a foolish old king, but as a literal, direct reflection of your own consciousness.
So what if Shakespeare's greatest tragedy really is a map of your own mind? Let's jump right into this because honestly, understanding Lear's epic downfall, that's actually the secret key to unlocking why we all suffer in our everyday lives. See, these characters aren't just made-up royals and castles. According to this ancient Vedantic perspective, they're literal personifications of the forces warring inside your own head right at this very moment. We've got a super clear path ahead today. We'll be looking at the tragedy of half-knowledge, the I and the mine, the wisdom of nothing, Cordelia as the silent witness, the storm of forced awakening, and finally, finding your true self. Let's get to it. Section 1. The tragedy of half-knowledge, living in the dangerous twilight. All right, we have to start by diagnosing the core human problem. And to do that, let's contrast total ignorance with partial knowledge. Total ignorance is kind of like blissful deep sleep. You literally see nothing, so no errors or suffering can even happen. I mean, you don't really have problems when you're deeply asleep, right? But partial knowledge? Well, that's our waking life. It's like walking into a dimly lit room, seeing a coiled rope on the floor, and instantly projecting a snake out of pure fear. I exist for sure, but you don't actually know what I am. King Lear knows he's a king, he knows he's a father, but he completely misses his true status as pure infinite consciousness. And it's exactly that dangerous half-knowledge that sets him up for all his terrible, tragic mistakes. And this perfectly illustrates how that tragic mistake actually works, through two specific mechanisms. First, there's avarana, which means concealment, and then vikshepa, which means projection. So because Lear's true infinite self is concealed from him, his mind just desperately projects and obsesses over the external world. He takes his daughter's completely hollow flattery and mistakes it for actual love. Why? Because he's projecting his own intense inner needs onto them. He is totally, completely disconnected from his true center. Moving on to Section 2, the I and the mine, the trap of Ahaṃkāra. Now let's meet the ego, beautifully personified by Lear himself. In Sanskrit, these concepts are known as Ahaṃkāra, which is the I, basically identifying with your body, your mind, your worldly status, and Mamakara, which is the mine, identifying with the things that belong to you. Lear literally exiles his favorite daughter, Cordelia, simply because she refuses to inflate his Ahaṃkāra. But hey, think about your own life for a second. Have you ever gotten incredibly angry at a friend just because they didn't text you back exactly how you wanted, or maybe not fast enough? It is the exact same false identity at work. Your I feels threatened, so you lash out. Lear is doing the exact same thing, just, on a massive royal scale. This whole dynamic is so perfectly captured in a quote from the ancient sage Bhartrhari. It honestly describes Lear to an absolute T. His partial knowledge, like knowing he has all this worldly power but zero spiritual truth, makes him so dangerously arrogant that he refuses to listen to anyone else. And that's the trap. When we only possess a little bit of knowledge about who we really are, we become totally blind to true wisdom. Section 3. The wisdom of nothing, inverting emptiness. Okay, so the word nothing gets obsessively repeated throughout the entire play, and we are about to completely invert your understanding of it. Throughout the story, everyone is talking about nothing. Now, to Lear, nothing means absurdity. It's this terrifying, meaningless emptiness. But when Cordelia says nothing, she means the presence of the silent witness. It's a profound silence that actually contains a true love that just can't be shoved into shallow, flattering words. But Vedanta takes this even further. It reveals that nothing is actually the most positive, full entity in all of existence. It's Brahman, or pure consciousness. It literally just means there is nothing other than the witnessing consciousness. So it's not some dark, scary void. It's actually the container of absolutely everything. Now, contrast that incredibly deep wisdom with where Lear's mind is currently at. Just listen to the raging ego of the man when he says, "I am a man more sinned against than sinning." Wow. He is hopelessly, completely trapped in his false, literal identity as the ultimate victim of the world. He entirely lacks the perspective of that silent witness. So naturally, every single external action feels like this direct, agonizing attack on his very being. And then contrast Lear's intense victimhood with this incredibly piercing line from his jester. Because in this Vedantic reading, the fool is actually the guru. It's so cool. He speaks the bitter, unpleasant truth through all these riddles to show Lear that he's completely lost his true center. He flat out tells Lear he has left nothing in the middle. He is frantically warning Lear that by giving away his kingdom and desperately seeking outward validation, he's totally abandoned his inner core, that true nothing, which is the self. Section 4, Cordelia as the silent witness, discovering the Sākṣī. So if the fool is the guru and Lear is the ego, then Cordelia has to represent the ultimate cure to the entire tragedy. She is the literal personification of Sākṣī, or the witness. Sākṣī is that pure, silent consciousness that brilliantly illuminates all of our experiences without ever actually being affected by them. Think about it. Cordelia refuses to perform in Lear's ridiculous fake love test. She speaks very little. She just remains quietly, powerfully true to herself, regardless of whether she's being loved, praised, or completely banished from the kingdom. She is this unshakable anchor of truth in a massive sea of projection. According to our source text, to truly grasp this, we have to go through 3 distinct stages of truth. And the final, absolutely most crucial step is indication, which means dropping the literal meaning entirely. See, Cordelia isn't just a literal flesh and blood character here. She points directly to the non-dual witness sitting inside of everyone. But Lear tragically fails at this final step. He views Cordelia strictly, literally, as his daughter, someone who owes him a grand performance. He completely misses that she's a signpost pointing him right toward his own eternal silent witness.
Section 5. The storm of forced awakening, when Mother Nature becomes the teacher.
To finally break Lear's stubborn ego, the universe literally forces him out onto the heath into a massive raging storm. And this leads us to one of the most profound symbolic realizations we're going to cover today. Have you ever actually noticed that there is absolutely zero human mother figure in King Lear? There's no queen, no mother to the sisters, nothing. The sources point out that the only mother in the entire play is Prakriti, Mother Nature, and she manifests as this furious, howling storm. Because Lear has completely identified with all these false earthly roles he basically borrowed from the material world of Prakriti, Mother Nature has to arrive as a terrifying, chaotic storm to violently strip all of those illusions away. Basically, the storm acts as a forced version of an intense Vedantic practice called nididhyasanam. Think of uncovering your true self kind of like digging for buried treasure. First, you hear the teaching, right? That's like removing the loose topsoil. Then you reflect on it, sweeping away the packed dirt. But finally, you have to firmly, relentlessly dwell on the truth to break through the solid bedrock of the ego. The storm is basically pressuring Lear, forcing him to continuously inquire into reality. It's trying to make him smash that giant rock of his ego, so his old habit of seeing the scary snake is finally replaced by the true vision of the harmless rope. But here is the real tragedy of the story. Lear's awakening ultimately fails. He totally cracks under the intense pressure of the storm. And why? Because he lacks vairagyam, or detachment. I mean, even at the very end, he selfishly clings to Cordelia as mine. He also lacks surrender. He just screams and rages at the wind and rain instead of yielding to the lesson they're trying to teach him. Plus, he lacks any sort of systematic inquiry. Because he doesn't have these vital tools, the storm doesn't save him. It just becomes a source of immense, crushing suffering, rather than the true spiritual purification he so desperately needed.
And finally, Section 6, Finding Your Own True Self, the Silent Recognition. So what is the ultimate takeaway here? What does mapping King Lear onto ancient philosophy actually do for your own life today? How on earth do we avoid his fate? Well, the sources use this famous metaphor called the 10th man story. Imagine a group of 10 people crossing a really dangerous river. Once they're across, the leader counts everyone to make sure they all survived. But he only counts 9 because, well, he completely forgets to count himself. So he starts panicking, searching everywhere for this missing 10th man. Finally, a random passerby walks up, points directly at the leader and says, "Dude, you are the 10th man." The leader doesn't acquire anything new. He doesn't magically transform into someone else. He just realizes what was already true the whole time. And self-knowledge is exactly like this. You don't need to go out and acquire anything new. You just have to drop all those false notions about who you think you are.
Okay, but how do we actually do this in the real world? Well, the true cure for the tragedy of half-knowledge is absolutely not to run away to some mountain cave and abandon the world. No way. Instead, you just shift your underlying understanding. You consciously decide to play your roles, whether that's as a parent, a friend, an employee, or hey, even a king. And you play those roles beautifully. You give it your all. But the trick is, you never let yourself become the role. You stay firmly anchored in the deep knowledge that you are simply the eternal witness sitting quietly behind all the drama. So, I'm going to leave you with one final thought to carry with you today. Just take a look at the drama unfolding in your own life right now. When the storms inevitably hit, and we all know they will, and things just don't go your way, which character in the cast of your consciousness are you going to choose to be? Are you going to be Lear, just raging blindly at the wind and making yourself miserable? Or are you going to be the silent witness, full of inner truth, just quietly, peacefully observing the play? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.